Hello, everyone, and welcome to our generative AI webinar today. We're just going to let everyone load up into the webinar and we'll get started shortly. Excellent. Well, without further ado, let's dive in. Thank you, all of you, for taking the time to join us today. My name is Gavin Newton-Tanzer, and I am president of CampusXR by Sunrise International. And today we're going to be sharing something that is definitely at the top of everyone's mind. It's the technology that we're reading about in the news with or things like ChatGPT, maybe that we've been playing around with in the past with either Lensa or DALL-E. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some of these technologies. We'll share a little bit about what they're being used for and how you can actually immediately take advantage of many of these free tools that are already able to improve your workforce efficiency and improve the way that you engage with students already. Now, many of these tools are readily available. I know there's a lot of sort of buzz going around with people trying to figure out exactly how they can work. So hopefully today we're able to dive into a few of them and talk about sort of how they can be implemented already into some of your marketing campaigns. So today, let's begin very quickly with a brief history of generative AI and how it works. Obviously, this has been a long journey as companies begin to think about how they can implement automated processes. But it wasn't really until we started experiencing Alexa that I think many of the people started having it integrated into your own lives. Of course, you had Siri a little bit earlier in 2011. But I think for me personally, when I started to realize it the first time was actually with AlphaGo and around 2016 and 17. And something that many of you may not know about me is when I was younger, I loved a game named StarCraft. And that game was for a long time considered to be sort of this incredibly complicated game for different computers to learn because it required a disparity in information. And so everyone always felt like games like Go or chess, where you had limited amounts of information. Those were games that AI could theoretically do very well against humans. But actually, only a few short years after AlphaGo actually beat the world's best Go player, they actually managed to create a system that beat the world's best StarCraft player as well. And that was roughly about 4 or 5 years ago. And people were just blown away about how it could operate in a very complex system with a lot of unknown information and still be able to successfully create results that were able to beat humans. Now, that being said, I don't want anyone to get scared just yet. This isn't exactly the singularity, and all of us are going to be just fine. But let's dive in a little bit into the basics. So, of course, for many of you, AI stands for artificial intelligence. And the main goal here is to create technology that allows us to interact and understand what humans are saying in a way that resembles human intelligence. Now, it's not built the same way as human intelligence, but it is able, ideally, to visualize the same way that we can, for example, recognize images, recognize speech and patterns, understand eventually emotions and other unsignaled language that doesn't just come from the spoken word. And recently, the one that's making the news is a breakthrough in 2 primary technologies. The first is NLP, so natural language processing, and the second is deep learning. Deep learning is actually the name of Google's long-standing AI, but this is actually separate in terms of the concept of deep learning. And what the 2 different fields are is first, the ability for AI, an artificial intelligence, to understand and interpret linguistics. Now, it's not understanding and interpreting words the way that a human does through a complete neural net. It's actually mostly looking at pattern recognition, what words come before other words, what ways that grammar is used, and what it means to express it by analyzing millions and millions and sometimes billions of different parameters and comparing them at different situations at different times to actually extract meaning through pattern recognition. Now, deep learning is a different approach. And this is actually probably what's most important most recently to the development of neural nets and what has allowed the breakthrough in things like ChatGPT, which allows a algorithm to improve based on large amounts of data and to increasingly create models that are more efficient at improving that algorithm to process that data more effectively. So it creates basically a feedback loop where you increase the amount of data created, it analyzes that data more efficiently, and then improves the algorithm to then go back through that process again and again and again. And this iterative system for a very long time was very challenging to do because it required first incredible amounts of input, and it required an incredible amount of computing power. Most recently, the breakthrough in a company called OpenAI was only possible because it had massive amount of data, both through search engines, both through Microsoft and through public data made available through Google, as well as incredible amounts that they funded themselves with actual human individuals that are labeling photos and correcting interpretations of language. And then finally, massive amounts of computer power that was made available through Azure and cloud computing networks through Microsoft. And so one of the things I just thought this would be fun, just as just a quick little game with ChatGPT. I'm sure many of you have played with it to explain natural language processing and deep learning to a 9-year-old. And I thought this was a really easy way to think of it. So have you ever played with a talking toy that responds to what you say? That example of natural language processing. So that toy isn't understanding what's going on. It's hearing words, it's hearing patterns, and then it can repeat simply based on that pattern recognition, as opposed to deep understanding. And deep learning is a lot about something by practicing and playing games. So computers learn how to do things better by showing lots and lots of examples. So they see human examples, learn and improve, and then develop better analytics in order to improve that going through. So let's talk about what's fundamentally changed with this emergence of generative AI. Now, believe it or not, the AI that powers a lot of the tools that we're using isn't actually very new. A lot of this technology existed in 2017, in 2018, 2019. IBM had launched Watson, which also had significant computing power and was used in many industrial contexts. Now, what's different is this is the first time that a lot of this technology is being made available for consumers, for individuals like yourself or myself to interact with this technology in a way that can impact our own lives. And this is just significantly different than the computing power that was previously made available to, say, Alexa and Siri. Now, interestingly enough, Google, as well as Apple, have had access to a lot of this ability and capability for a long time, but they were always a little bit nervous. They were nervous because, one, it could disrupt their own business models, right? Google recently, as many of you I'm sure saw, was really concerned about what would happen if they offered a product that disrupted people's use of search, or if it changed the way people use search, when that was a significant source of momentum for their ability to grow as an organization. And Apple was perceived about what it might mean for its reputation, because Facebook was a perfect example when it released its AI-enabled chatbots, and it ended up saying things that were either maybe racist based on the training data, or based on information that it was pulling from other users' social media accounts. So there were guardrails that had to be put in place first. And for these large companies, they had to be very careful about these releases. Now, OpenAI had no such concerns. It's a young, hot startup with Sam, the founder of YC Combinator, coming out and deciding, you know what, I'm going to shake things up. And he is much less concerned about the implications of some of these other technologies. And so he's been rushing into it headlong and kind of forcing big companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and Apple to adapt. So in general, I'd say it's moving us forward, but that is definitely something you're going to want to think about. Now, some of the positives there are, first, that generative AI is honestly a way to kind of unleash the imagination of billions of people. And what I mean by that is it has sucked in all of the creative input of many different artists, knowledge of humanity, all of the potential books and periodicals and information that's out there in the world, and is able to blend some of this together when we give it specific queries. So you're actually leveraging all of the images, sounds, video that functionally that have been digitized in humanity, and allow it to give you potential outputs of all different kinds. So it's an incredible brainstorming engine. It's extremely useful in operational efficiency. So it allows you to create workflows that previously might have been a little tedious or not have been as fun. For example, having something that an individual communicating, integrating it directly into a CRM, having it automatically create a series of follow-up campaigns, and otherwise be able to continue to engage with a person in a very natural human way, but automated system that otherwise would have taken someone to a lot of tedious work. Third, I would say, is affordability. And so particularly when it comes to basic services or administrative work, it can take up all of that slack and free up humans to focus on the higher level individualized engagement work that they're much more interested in. And then finally, it allows you to create real-time feedback and analytics, because as you're communicating with something, it can learn more about who it is it's talking to, their needs, and then address those needs directly. So those are some of the strengths. Now, some of the weaknesses I think all of us are quite familiar with. The first is something called AI bias, and this depends a lot on how you're using it. So for example, if you are trying to create just a general AI, for example, like what ChatGPT is, as opposed to one with specific use case, you have to be very, very careful about the data set that it's been fed, because all of its interpretations are based on this large amount of data. So if it, for example, like in the case of Facebook, which, as many of you know, is pretty has a lot of vitriol and a lot of hate language on the site, if it scrapes through the site without particular guardrails in place, it can end up with having some unfortunate results, as you can imagine, based on opinions of some of the people it can pick up there. So one thing is, for general AI, very important to put on those guardrails to be careful. Two is inaccuracy. So AI can only be as accurate as the raw data that it is fed. And so if the data is incorrect and then it scrapes from sources that are not necessarily official, it can relate that information back in a way that is inaccurate. Now, this particular use case, I don't think is a major problem, because many individuals do know when they search on Google that not every site they find is going to be a high quality. However, we are used to, for example, you kind of have this natural expectation that what it's going to tell you is correct. So when it does give you a wrong answer, people haven't yet learned to know that, oh, okay, maybe I have to check the information that it provides me, not just take it wholeheartedly as 100% correct. So these are the two things that I'd say are probably the two of the bigger issues. Some people have also been saying, oh no, it's going to take all of our jobs. Well, that's highly unlikely. I would just say to those individuals that it's more likely to result in a technological revolution, where we have certain jobs that do ultimately end up disappear, like we aren't driving sort of horse-drawn buggies anymore, but it's going to unleash humans to spend time on creating things and entering into different jobs and professions. So it's definitely going to make a difference, but it's not necessarily going to replace humans. It might just replace certain jobs. So let's go in and take into a couple of examples of how can you use this right now. And some of the tools that are readily available for you to integrate into your own workflows. The first one I would say is probably the most fun, and that's AI image generators. So we'll go through a couple of these examples. So here's one. This is DALL-E 2. If you haven't had a chance to use DALL-E 2, I highly recommend it. There's another one, which is Stable Diffusion, and Stable Diffusion is also a lot of fun. It allows you to do slightly different things. So DALL-E 2 is able to create images based on texts and styles. So for example, if you tell it a particular style that you'd like with a particular image that you'd like, it can create, based on a comprehensive databases of images, the ability to generate its own sort of impromptu creative artwork. So here are just some very silly examples. They can be much more artistic than this. This was just us trying to have some fun. But you can see here, when we type in realistic photograph of an astronaut riding a horse, or you can say Darth Vader waiting in his line for his appointment at the Genius Bar, or Shrek being sued by Donkey in court looking really sad. So you can see all sorts of different images, and it generates many different images when you do this. So you can imagine it's basically clip art on steroids. If you're ever creating something in a newsletter or you need something fun, that's one easy way to do it. The next way is another organization called Lensa AI. Now, Lensa AI decided to take a slightly different approach. Instead of focusing on artificially created images based on prompts, they took the they decided that, you know what all the people on Instagram really want is the ability to turn themselves into superheroes, into animated characters, into astronauts, into the best vision of themselves and fanciful vision of themselves. It's almost like hiring a personal artist and asking them to create you a vision of you as Superman, for example. And so it analyzes your own selfies that you upload and then can turn you into basically a magic avatar. So just for fun, and I should mention that Lensa received 17 million downloads and basically took over Instagram for a great deal of time, about 6 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer. So a couple of examples. So this is just fun with me uploading a couple of images of myself, and you'll see it can give me, based on different types of prompting and different types of cues, images of me as a sci-fi character, a futuristic vision of myself as a rock star, etc. Which is just mostly just a fun thing to play with, but is already being used by companies to create avatars on their social media, to create avatars on their websites. And so think of in the past, when you wanted all of your teammates to kind of have a special look, this is an easy way that that's already being implemented by startups all over the world. Now, the next type of image of generative AI technology that you can easily integrate into your workflow are large language models. So the most common one that we're all very familiar with is, of course, ChatGPT. And I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure how many of you have already taken the opportunity to use ChatGPT. If you haven't, I highly recommend taking the opportunity to use it just to see just how powerful the information is, because it's been trained on 45,000 gigabytes worth of information. That's what I mentioned, by just the sheer power of the system. And one of the things that I found most interesting here is I spoke with a friend who actually working at OpenAI about how they came up with this initial concept of being able to develop it, and did they know it was going to be this big? And the actual answer that I received was that this actually was a little bit of an accident. They knew that deep learning would allow it to improve automatically. They knew that providing more access to data would make a massive difference. And they knew that if they provided more computing power, funded by Microsoft, that they would be able to have a breakthrough. But they underestimated just how powerful that breakthrough was going to be. They were amazed even themselves. They expected to have results like they did, not for another, say, 3 or 4 years, not expecting to have it just suddenly in October or November. So that was a pretty significant change. One thing to mention is ChatGPT is very much kind of a chameleon. It adapts to the use cases that you want. So you can program it to work in different ways, or you can just leverage its existing core functions as it's integrated into a couple of different technologies. So for example, ChatGPT is now being integrated into Bing search engine. It's also being implicated in a number of different use cases, which I will show you in a little bit. Now, some of the statistics that I think are kind of remarkable. So this is just a quick little chart to show you how quickly it took to get at 1 million users. So you see Facebook took about 10 months, Instagram 2 months, Spotify 5 months, Netflix 3.5 years. ChatGPT got 1 million users in 5 days. It's absolutely extraordinary. And the number of people, it has 13 million individual active users visiting ChatGPT, which is just extraordinary. That's how many active users per day. Normally, we talk about things as monthly active users, not daily active users, and that number is going up like crazy. ChatGPT crossed the 100 million users milestone in January, making it the fastest growing technology that we've ever seen. And they recently released a paid version that is likely going to surpass the amount of revenue a early startup has made in the technology field since ever. So recently, their biggest issue, however, is the sheer amount of computing power that it takes to power the engine. And so that's why they quickly turned to the person who originally had given them the funding, Microsoft, who had already given them a couple of $1 billion in investment, and then immediately took on another $10 billion in funding because they were quickly burning through their cash as more and more users were using ChatGPT due to the sheer computation power that it requires. And just for some fun ones, for those of you that are interested in sort of just how capable is it, it's already passed an MBA exam given by a Wharton School professor, and it passed the bar exam as well. So it is quite interesting to see just how intelligent they are. But sometimes, honestly, it's better just to have some fun. So here is an example. I asked to see, like, write a biblical verse in the style of King James Bible explaining how to remove a peanut butter sandwich from a VCR. And for those of you, if you want, you can take a moment to read it, and you'll see, like, it's incredible the ability that it was able to understand the entire request and then implement something like this. I honestly think if this is something that I asked an associate to do, even a social media manager, they would struggle to write something that is as good or better, and certainly not in 15 seconds. So I think this is just a fun little example just to show you where its creative potential is just truly significant. So as it says here, we won't be putting sandwiches in our VCRs anytime soon, but it just goes to show just how powerful these creative engines can be. Now, API of OpenAI, of ChatGPT, can also be integrated in other existing tools. So here's an example of copy.ai. For those that are looking for more immediate tool-oriented sort of AI that you can instantly use, there is an emergence of technology that uses the same ChatGPT engine, but applies it to specific use cases. So here, for example, writing newsletters, LinkedIn posts, or follow-up emails can be, with the copy for it, can be done relatively quickly and use existing templates with a very seamless process. So let's show a quick video here. Let me optimize for video, and you can see what this looks like. And hopefully all of you can see. So here's an example where you're able to first tell what this email is for. You choose a tone, whether it's going to be professional, professional, playful, etc. And then you're able to use different levels of engagement. And then it's going to create that email for you immediately. It takes roughly, I'd say, 15 to 20 seconds to create. And then you have the email content created for you. And you can actually have multiple different examples depending on what it is that you're looking for. So you can see here, it talks about, hey, I met you at a college fair, saw you at a college fair, I was impressed with your interest in, for example, the engineering program, or I work in admissions at the school name. And it creates many, many different examples, which can automatically be used either through a outreach CRM engine or anything that you would like. And so again, is this completely replacing humans? No, but it is allowing you to quickly generate very easy standard outreach emails or anything that you would like for newsletters, web copy, anything that you need to produce quickly. So another example is, I'm sure many of you are constantly having to make presentations for various majors, for new programs, for any updates or developments in school. And I don't know about you, but when we have to make a presentation, one of the bottlenecks is frequently design of the presentation. And so in this case, we're able to have the design be completely developed with the text that we have created, input it, and then it can create the presentation with different visuals or feels based on what it is that I'm looking to accomplish. So here, I'll show you again an example. So you can hear, you take the slides that are developed, you paste in the content that we just had created, and then it's already just the number of slides, and then it's going to create the design based on my preferences. So here is just a quick example where it can show you, based on generic content, that it's also either pulling from the internet or creating based on the preferences that I have set in the engine. So it goes to show you that a lot of these sort of more generic content-driven sort of areas, particularly lower level copy, is going to quickly be kind of subsumed. And so the job of a copy editor, at least at this level, is going to be able to first use one of these tools to brainstorm maybe 10, 12, 15 ideas, and then take the very best ideas and compile it into something that you would like. Or if it's maybe lower priority or less important content, it can actually do that development for you in a very, very painless way. So then, of course, we've talked about image development. We've talked a little bit about text development and text integration. Now, of course, the next one, and I would say the one that still has a little ways to go, but is improving rapidly, is video generation. And I think this is an area where you're going to start to see over probably the next 12 to 18 months, significant improvements, because a lot of people are able to do rapid iterations and already starting to see significant progress. So let's use one as an example. So here's Synthesia, which allows you to turn text into high quality promotional videos in just a couple of minutes. It's very easy. It allows you to have your text, music, branding, content all integrated into the system. And then it uses that to create corresponding high quality speech. So it's functionally a really powerful speech engine for product launches, ad campaigns, anything that you would like. And it is able to create realistic looking AI interpretations of that text. So let's take a quick look here. So I'm joined by my friend. I'll let her explain her own purpose. Let me actually make sure I'm sharing sound, and I am.
Thanks, Gavin. Hey, everyone. I'm Anna, an AI avatar created entirely by artificial intelligence. I hope Gavin's starting to open the door to all that AI has to offer. Thanks for stopping by.
And so you can see that's actually not a human, but instead of the very blocky and uncomfortable ways we tend to think of AI human beings, the technology enabling it to become more natural is getting more and more powerful. And you can envision the ability to create human-like interactions or video content, which previously would have required you to hire someone or film someone for just to be able to get them to say a quick little message or to integrate them into a presentation or a program launch. You could actually have an entire virtual presentation created for you with a virtual human. Now, is that going to be appropriate in every circumstance? Definitely not. But there are certainly instances where that would save a great deal of time and effort. Now, another example, and I'd say this is something I'm really excited about, though it's also relatively early stage, is Gen 1. Now, Gen 1 integrates with Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion is that image engine that I showed you earlier, similar to DALL-E 3, that creates interactive image content. But instead of creating image content, we're going to create video content. So it allows you to transform videos based on certain prompts or graphic styles to create something that's relatively new. So let me show you a quick examples of sort of how this works. So here's an example of Gen 1, where it takes an individual walking outside and you say, make it claymation, for example. Or you have an individual walking outside in snow and you upload an image and you want them walking on the moon. Or you have an individual spinning around and you want to change the style of that individual looking around. And so it allows you to do transformations into different styles of video with relatively no coding required. And so it's just a very fun way to take, oh, I want this image on that video, or I want this video, but with this type of a style or this type of a feel. And if it's something that you just want to very quickly throw into social media, it's a very easy way to create sort of an original idea using existing content in a fun sort of way. Now, a lot of these are tools that these are just some of the tools that we're working with and that we like to use. Some of them have free trials. Some of them do cost like a monthly fee, depending on the features that you're looking to use. However, I recommend looking at Futurepedia. This is a great way to look at all of the various tools that are emerging on a daily basis. The one thing I will say is please note that many of these tools, when you use them, are very, very new, which means that the companies behind them are still sort of establishing their business models. They're still trying to figure out how their products work and where the best use cases are. However, because of that, it's kind of like when Airbnb or Uber just launched. There's all sorts of free trials and lots of fun opportunities. So it's a great time to kind of go in and try out all the tools before they start charging a lot of money for them. Similar how ChatGPT initially was like great and completely free for everyone, and then now they're charging $20 a month for their premium service. So a great time to kind of try it and play it around around before things start to get a little bit more expensive. But anyway, that's sort of just one way to kind of look at some different tools out there. Now, a quick little timeline to think about what comes next, right? So before we were using in pre-2020, we were using it for spam detection or translation or basic autocomplete, which we don't think about as AI, but is definitely AI. Then now we started getting into like actual draft content. We basically are able to complete all of 8th and 9th grade in like full A's or close to an A, and then even is able to complete high school and some university courses with some reasonable degree of accuracy, not necessarily an A+ per se in like a top university course, but able to complete the work at least. Definitely capable of getting a passing grade, able to create art, logos, photography, and various forms of content. So what are we going to expect this coming year and years to come? Well, first, I think you're going to see significant quality improvements in video content, for one. You're already starting to see improvements in languages, the ability to recognize different language and respond in different types of languages, which is interesting. You're starting to see higher quality of responses and the ability to identify truth or not truth, the ability to identify which type of things have been generated by AI and what has been generated by humans. That's a very important ability to be able to create that distinction. Now, in the future, we expect it to be able to create 3D models, create 3D immersive worlds. For those of you that have ever looked at any of our augmented reality or virtual reality content, it currently is extremely costly and time-consuming to develop virtual worlds and to develop 3D content. Well, all of that is going to radically change when we can use strictly AI, which will drastically cut down on the amount of time a 3D artist has to spend on very basic things, like, for example, rigging an avatar, for example, giving structure to a 3D avatar. It'll just be able to do it based on the model that it's already had. So while it's not going to eliminate the need for 3D artists, it will drastically change where and how they spend their time. And so by 2030, I mean, it's anyone's guess on exactly where we're going, but we're expecting to be able to have AI be able to fully create custom virtual worlds, to be able to take a piece of work, for example, say like, you know what, I really loved Harry Potter and I want to read what happens to Harry Potter afterwards and be able to absorb the writing styles, for example, of a particular book or artist and be able to apply it in different ways. Or I could say, you know what, I love Harry Potter, but I want to see the similar style and what it would be like as a space opera, and then be able to apply it in a different way, or be able even potentially to hear things like a specific type of music and be able to create different types of music that meet the sort of same qualities that it's been able to analyze in our own personal preferences. So it really is, in terms of the ability for it to generate content or higher quality external product based on things that already exist or things that we already know about, is truly incredible. Now, of course, these things aren't going to just kind of wait to emerge. They're going to emerge incredibly quickly and start being used incredibly quickly. So already we're looking at the global AI market at being $136 billion, but it's estimated that just in the next 8 years, it's going to get to $1.8 trillion. It's insane how fast this industry is expected to grow and the implications it's going to have on society. So right now, most businesses say that it's the top priority for their business plans, and automation and chatbots, this is just some examples that I'll show you in a little bit, are incredibly powerful uses of AI that exist in every day. So just in terms of your students, this is absolutely something that's going to be part of their lives, and something that you're going to at least want to be roughly familiar with. So let's talk in a little bit more detail about what that might mean for you. So obviously, we shared a couple of generative AI tools that you already can use and incorporate into your workflows, but there's other things that you can be doing as well. So for example, you can use it to have access to certain types of data based on your student data to provide powerful analytics of what types of areas are most effective or what type of messaging is going to be best for particular types of students, or being able to answer custom questions or give very responsive, targeted feedback and messaging to specific students. Because you can imagine it's truly impossible to spend the amount of time for a human to be able to answer, say, 1,000 student inquiries and remember everything about them and give them a custom email follow-up as a result. But AI is capable of doing that. So if, for example, an inquiry gives you a little bit more information about them, about their interests, about things that they like to do, anything like that, you can give highly custom responses in written language or even being able to speak to them. Of course, AI-powered avatars and chatbots are incredibly powerful systems, and I'll show you examples of those in a little bit. Content marketing creation, so the ability to create social content, newsletter content, email content, and social media and short video content, an incredible way to leverage this technology, at least at the moment. Brainstorming concepts, I think, is honestly probably immediately valuable. So thinking of a new headline or a title, thinking about a new follow-up message or a way that you're going to generate a new presentation, or even just saving yourself some time. Says while it might not be able to get your presentation to 100% ready, it might be able to get you to 60 or 70% ready very painlessly. And which, of course, ultimately is going to cut down on operating costs and save you time. So if, for example, a member of your team was spending 30% or 40% of their time doing some of this generic either content creation or presentation creation, etc., you can save a massive percentage of it. Maybe not all of that time, but if you can free up 20%, 30% of someone's time, it results in tremendous savings and efficiencies because you can then allocate that time somewhere else. So a couple of examples that I wanted to show you that are a little bit more contextual, specifically to admissions. So here's an example just using DALL-E 2, using prompts and generated images. Just if you were going to, for example, use creating an image for a college admissions newsletter or a college newsletter showing several students happily holding backpacks and papers near a university building. Again, these are just very silly. You could give it much more specific or contextual needs based on what it is that you're looking to do. Or you could, for example, ask it to create different types of responses for ways that you would write a follow-up after a college fair. So you can see here on both sides, we have two different ways of approaching the same message based on their personal interests. And it can create a highly targeted message based on what it is that they like, tailored specifically to your request. So the more you could even upload an example of your own writing style, and it's able to leverage your style and your voice and able to do it. So one of the things that I also want to share with you are the tools that, of course, we are working to develop to create highly custom responses and leverage some of these tools to help you. So in addition to all those free tools, there is ability to integrate personality, leveraging your own institution, your own information, your own communication styles, and your own ability to respond to queries or emails through social media or through your website, and integrate this as a common system that's very easy to program and implement. So for example, right now, you can create an avatar that can handle, not like a chatbot, but actually as an AI and know everything from your website to your brochures to the way that you respond to requests, and integrate that into a system that can be deployed as early as in a couple of weeks. So let me just show you a very fun little example. So we can do this, by the way, with any partner who would like to sort of see a demo of this for your institution. We're happy to deploy this. So this, we just took a partner institution. In this case, this is one we just had it scrape content from George Washington University School of Engineering, just for fun. So this is not a 100% by any means, but we were able to upload an example of their brochure, link it to their website, and instantly create an avatar. In this case, we created a 2D avatar, but it can be a 3D avatar as well, that's able to communicate based on specific prompts. So for example, I can go ahead and ask it specific questions that it's just going to go ahead and pull based on what it needs. So if anyone has a specific question that you would like me to ask, feel free. In the meantime, I'll just ask I'll just say hello. And this could be integrated, for example, in their virtual tour or built into, it could be built into the virtual tour or built into a campus tour or anything that you would like, depending on what it is. And then I'm able to interact and get any information. So for example, I can ask, what types of majors do you offer? Or I could ask, for example, what museums are near campus? Or I could ask, for example, for example, if I enjoy physics, is there something that you would recommend for me? Or I could ask something, what makes going to school in DC unique? And so you'll see it's absolutely incredible that I'm not getting just individual responses. None of this information was written or created by us. It's pulling strictly from content that we linked directly from the website. And so it's able, obviously, to get trained and become better and better and better based on responses that it has and information that we input into it. So it allows you to have an incredibly powerful response that grows and improves over time. So that's one thing that you can think about that could then be integrated in many, many different ways. We can integrate it into the virtual tour. It can be integrated into your website. It can be integrated into social media. It can be integrated even into email responses. And so you can have something that actually knows all about your institution and is constantly being curated and improved on the back end, has full analytics, and then can create increasingly customized responses, even able to generate memories based on interactions with certain emails or usernames. And so it allows you to have this repository of information constantly improving and being able to be deployed based on anything that it is that you need. So this, just to give you an idea of what this means that you can save time writing emails, save time running social content, and save time answering inquiries while still having all of that information compiled, even integrated and sorted for you into your CRM. And so you can have, depending on the level of sophistication you want to get, it can start something relatively inexpensive by leveraging OpenAI's what's called API and integrating it into custom information from your school. So you can have many queries of engagement directly with that individual. And so depending on how you leverage it and the amount of information you'd like to provide, it can range anywhere from an initial investment of like $8,000 to $10,000 to maybe a more sophisticated like custom character between $20,000 to $25,000, depending on the level of inquiries and the level of information that you want to provide to it. And it constantly gets better and better and better. The more memory that you train it, the more information that you provide it, the more responses that it gives, it becomes constantly improving, of course, with you kind of as the parent sort of standing in the background and supervising it as it grows. So you want to make sure that you're curating its growth as time goes on. So these are, just to show you, amazing opportunities to kind of leverage efficiencies, and it has tremendous implications for admissions. So for example, we can create custom inquiries, create answers to student queries, pulling all that information together, social media content creation. We can have huge changes to SEO, and this is one of the things that, frankly speaking, that Google is most worried about, because you can create articles for SEO and responses to things incredibly quickly. You can do XR integration, and this is one of the things that's really neat. So if you have a virtual tour, you can now have a 100% available guide live that's responsive. Just like you would have a live tour guided, now you can actually have a live guided tour always available, whether in VR or in just on your computer screen. And it can be integrated into augmented reality experiences that can be deployed so that an individual can have always in the palm of their hand a representative from your school. AI-generated emails can do post follow-up and allow you to analyze data based on having better results over time. So it's a really exciting time and a great time to be thinking about what this is. Now, there are some other sides that you'll want to think about, because these tools are not just available for you. They are also available to the student, which means you should be ready for essays written by AI, content written by AI, resumes that are uploaded and crafting information for, you might be like, oh, this is like a very polished response from a student that might not have been written by them. And so you're going to have to constantly be on the lookout, because it is a bit of a two-way street for students that are leveraging these tools in their applications. So we do expect that to a certain extent that application materials will be affected. So there may be increasingly needs for things like tools to verify if it is an AI response, or for example, more live interactions to verify individual student capacities. So it is going to be definitely something you want to think about in that respect. And second, probably massive implications on the academics at each of your institutions, particularly when it comes to like writing papers or crafting original ideas. So there is an entire thing to be discussed about implications for academia, but that is not what we're talking about today. So today we're talking about admissions and marketing and the incredible virtual experiences that you can develop. And I hope our presentation today was helpful. We are happy to share both the recording as well as the presentation if you'd like to have access to any of these resources. And please do feel free to reach out if you're interested in having a virtual character created for your institution, which can help you answer responses on your website or provide feedback through social media, or ultimately create highly customized follow-up campaigns. So definitely a pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with you. For anyone who would like, this is a great time. Please integrate these questions into, please write your questions in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to answer them. So first, it looks like we've got a question here. Seen 3 articles of journal news that have listed ChatGPT as a co-author. Yeah, I think that's going to become highly commonplace. I think you're going to start seeing ChatGPT integrated, because they're going to have to say that at least some of this content, whether it was just from a drafting or an editing perspective, or even some of the original ideas, came from AI. And I think that's going to become increasingly common as time goes on. And does anyone have any additional questions? I'll give everyone a few minutes to see if anyone would like to ask anything else. Please feel free to type in the Q&A if you'd like anything else answered. I certainly hope no one's been scared by this. I hope this gets you excited about AI. Going once. Okay, so we know a couple of, here we go, a couple of more questions just popped up. Do we know how many options ChatGPT gives for a single question? So first, if you ask it just a question, it's going to give you a single answer unless you specifically request it to give you multiple answers to a question. So for example, if you ask it, how do I say this in French? Or can you write me a French paragraph and give me 3 examples, it will give you then 3 examples. So unless you specifically ask for multiple, you'll generally only get 1 response. Jim says, I can see the power and potential, but how the actual application integration to CRM? Great question. That takes a little bit more work. Please go ahead and reach out to us. So you can reach out to us. We'll follow up with you afterwards, and we can tell you about sort of the different ways you can integrate in highly customized ways into your existing CRM system and into your back end. That requires a little bit of custom work, basically. But that's things that we're happy to help you with. Holly Murdoch says, for a chatbot, how does it respond to misspellings or questions worded oddly by international students? That's a great question. It's actually tremendously good at it, better than humans are. And the reason is it's trained on it. So it's actually trained on misspellings and the ability to interact with humans, because guess what? A lot of the human training data is inaccurate. So it's actually extremely good at doing that. Okay, Raymundo, can this be applicable to the similar advising individual functions at a university? That's a great question. We're actually currently developing a advisory AI character. I don't like calling them chatbots. An advisory AI character for NACAC, the National Association for College Admissions Counselors, because there is the student guide to admissions, and this is a 50-page booklet for the student page guide to admissions that unfortunately many students just won't read. And so instead of making it a booklet for individuals to read, it's a chatbot. You can just ask questions. So instead of having to read about what are best practices, you just ask it a question and it'll be like, oh, well, if you're applying to college, you should do this, 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 and this. And oh, if you have a question about the personal statement, here are the things that we recommend. And so it becomes a conversational interaction instead of read these 60 pages, which is looking to be much more successful and a very powerful use case. So for advisory functions, I'd say it's excellent. How important is the avatar aspect of the chat engagement? Great question. The answer is not at all. You can have the avatar or not have the avatar. You can have a 3D avatar that engages, that actually is interactive. If you want to make it more human-like, or you can have it completely not exist at all, and it's just a conversation based on what you'd like to do. So the avatar makes no difference whatsoever. Another attendee, how do you assure accuracy in a chatbot? For example, the cost of a program with in-state and out-state costs. So it is excellent at knowing information, just like if any information that we've provided it, it's going to do an incredible job of being accurate. Where it's not going to have accuracy or struggle with accuracy or for information it hasn't been fed, because it's unable, a lot of the use cases we use, we don't want it to have free access to the internet, because free access to the internet can allow it to have inaccurate information. So instead, we have highly targeted sources of information. But if you provide it with the access to information, it doesn't matter about in-state or out-state or any specific use case. As long as you provide it the information, it's going to be accurate. What about admissions transcripts and evaluations of courses? I'm not sure I exactly understand that question. If it's about sort of consulting on those things, then if you, for example, uploaded your courses or evaluations, it could summarize them. I'm not sure if that's exactly what that question is. Amanda Miller asks, how would you be using AI to analyze data? Which program would you use? And so this is the one thing that I've always been a little bit careful of. So right now, we can use our own tools to do the data analysis. The only issue with that is it requires you to use the data, like deep personal data inside some of these systems. So right now, we haven't been using it too frequently for personalized data, because we would want to segment that into a specialized private server. So it's possible we can already do it with an API integration from OpenAI. Though recently, we're still focusing more on marketing content, dialogue, engagement, things that are less like are public functionally, like things you want to share that information, because private data analysis would obviously require access to that data, which would be something that you're either handing over to like some data startup or are handing over, for example, to like Microsoft. And right now, this is something that I'd say we're not yet comfortable to do, because we'd have to segment to a separate server and isolate that data. So I think that's coming soon, but not something I would do just yet, even if the power to do that is already there. So the beauty of, now Alba asks, what CRMs will you work with? We can work with any CRM. It's directly the question of creating an API integration. And so that's something that you just want to be able to, that's something you can reach out to us and we can work with you to customize. Another attendee, is there a disclaimer for incorrect answers? I think right now in most conversations, you can add a disclaimer. That's a very easy thing to do. You can just kind of say like, hey, I'm a virtual human. And I like, if like there's a chance that you could have like incorrect answers or things like that. That'd be a very easy thing to add. It's just a question of where you would like to put that. It could even be something that the character says in the beginning of a conversation, if you would like. There is definitely the potential for incorrect answers in highly nuanced circumstances, and then it just gets trained and improves over time. Are there new tactics for SEO that should be considered? Asks Tim. I think absolutely. I actually think the algorithms of search engines are going to radically change. And I think the reason they're going to be changed is because currently a lot of them are linked to inbound links or references of certain keywords. So for example, if a keyword appears on a website or references and has a link dropped that links to one site, that helps your search results improve. And already AI is able to completely destroy those algorithms, because you can actually use it to create like 500 versions of basically the same article saying why your institution is the best, and then immediately push those to many different websites, all linking back, which then completely destroys search algorithms. Of course, Google will say you're not allowed to do that, and it violates their terms and conditions, but it's still something that's already happening. So I think it's just a matter of time until SEO, like the search engines, catch up, and then they start, for example, dismissing any article that they know or can tell is written by AI, which is difficult to do but still doable. Or if there becomes some new norm that says you have to label content that was generated by an AI, which is possible, or they use a completely different algorithm altogether, and search gradually shifts from being sort of our traditional type something in the box and it comes down, to actually be interaction with an AI. So for example, I can envision a future where we're talking directly to Bard, which is Google's AI, or ChatGPT, which is now basically Microsoft or like Bing ChatGPT. which is basically Microsoft's new search engine. And that kind of starts to replace the conventional search engine. So it'll be interesting to see how that emerges, because then it's kind of providing you with a couple of different answers, or empowering a couple of different answers. Another attendee, you briefly touched on workflow creation for automation email drip campaigns. Can you give me a little more insight as how this would work? So you can build a custom, so let's say we build a character for you. And it has all the information about your school and ability to create custom responses based on the things that you would like and the things that you are based on certain needs. We can then actually integrate it with your CRM to be able to create custom messages targeted based on a certain whatever frequency it is that we would like to develop. So this would be a custom integration directly going through whatever system you use to kind of push out content based on the interactions that those people have had, preset based on that character's knowledge and the ultimate goal that you'd like to have. So it can, for example, have an inquiry come in. And once the inquiry comes in, it has a conversation with someone that logs that in the CRM. After logging in the CRM, it can create an automatic drip campaign that says 1 week later, ask them a follow-up. You could send a message about the institution referencing this and send it out. And then 2 weeks later, do the same thing. 3 weeks later, do the same thing. And it's able to do that while updating your CRM in real time. So incredibly powerful where this is going. And the tools are just going to escalate in their power as time goes on. Next, we're getting Samantha Bell. A lot of students ask specific questions without identifying themselves. A transfer student, freshman, international. How does the system do with follow-up questions to narrow down details about the student, answer the question accurately? Again, that's a great question. I'd say first, it will do its best to answer the question with limited information, but if it needs more information, that can be trained in. So for example, we could tell it always ask this question first, or you need to clarify this type of information, and the answers are different depending on who you are. Or over time, as it has better accuracy, or as we have different answers, we can identify which are the best answers or train it on an existing data set, for example, emails that you've sent out, to create more intelligence as it goes on, so it can add increasingly more powerful and more relevant answers to students. And last question is, will we get a recording of this presentation? The answer is yes, you will get a recording. You can even use ChatGPT to summarize it for you if you would like. And we will go ahead and send out follow-up information as well. And always happy to discuss in more detail if any of you would like to discuss in more detail. Looks like we've got another question from Billy Green. What type of security is in place to prevent Dan prompts? I'm not sure. I think that may be a typo. To prevent. So I think I'll just answer the question generally. Security, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but I mean, there is a couple of things that we have to put in place to avoid. Oh, do anything new. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to restrict internet access, and we have to limit its source to specific types of information. This is one of the reasons why I almost never will allow it to have full-fledged access to the internet, because it's just not a great way to be able to, you can't limit the information it'll have. So we almost never give it full access for information. The next thing is we can have it to have security built in to immediately exit conversations that are very clearly abusive. And so, for example, if it is a student or an individual that is clearly asking things that are inappropriate, it can just say, you know what, sorry, not an appropriate conversation, and then leave. So that's another thing. The other thing is it can identify individuals or IP addresses that have abused it in the past. So if it's like, well, this person's not serious, and then it can individually block that engagement and just not enter that engagement with individuals from the same IP address. So there's a lot of controls that can be put in place, and the controls are constantly getting more sophisticated and being built out. So these are the things that you'll want to be thinking about over time. There's still possibility for things to slip through the cracks, but not sort of outrageous things. It's generally like very strange things. You'd be like, how did you even come up with that sort of thing? In which case you're like, okay, cute. It's like someone doing a prank. You block that in the future, and then it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game with people trying to find ways to get the AI character to do crazy things. So that's just something that you're constantly having to improve as time goes on. Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure speaking to all of you. Thank you so much. It's going to be a really exciting time. We look forward to being here with you as these new innovations come out, provide our best to summarize them for you and activate them for you so they become actionable as much as possible. If anyone would like to follow up in more detail, I'll go ahead and post my email directly here on the so you can find my email here in the very beginning. Feel free to reach out to me. We'll be sending more information as well. And feel free to reach out if you'd ever like to discuss in more detail how you can leverage some of these tools or how we could build a custom tool for you. Anyway, that's Gavin at CampusXR.org. I look forward to being in touch and have a wonderful rest of your day.